but were not unknown, you know. Miracle workers surfaced from time to time. Galilee was known for it, oddly. Holy men. Ordinary folks went wild for them. Life was no bowl of olives, clearly. Romans, only interested in themselves. Those at the bottom of the pile were looking for anything to make their lot easier. So when this Jesus chappie starts causing a stir and everyone's talking about his impressive conjuring tricks, nobody took much notice. But there was something different about him. The preaching and the teaching alongside the healing. The way he called God his Father. Peculiar. I know about arguments, they're my business words, and evidence. But this one, he was a smooth talker. I'm not sure how. Mr. Nobody from little Nowheresley, North No Man's Land. Ha! Yet he seemed to have an answer for everything, especially after that rumpus in the temple. Who on earth does he think he is? Obviously, I have a degree of sympathy privately. It's more like a farmyard than a house of prayer most days. Things perhaps should be more decorous, as our Roman friends might say. But our traditions are simply ages old. They are what we do. How else are the people to make their sacrifices to God? It's supply and demand, a system like any other. Not perfect. Well, naturally, there are one or two out to make a quick shekel. But you cannot behave as he did and expect to go unchallenged. It was an outrage to public Jewish decency. After him trying to drive traders from the outer courtyard, tipping over the money changers' tables and yelling at the top of his lungs like he owned the place, I thought I'd better talk to him face to face. He'd apparently claimed if the whole temple were flattened, he'd rebuild it in 3 days. Pardon? That temple, the very heart of our faith, has been decades in the making. Was he just a madman? Or he'd be up before the tribunal proper eventually, best get the inside track. He might not get fair treatment otherwise. Oh, yes, that mattered to me. Believe me, our God is a God of justice. Low-key, that would be best, not to inflame the situation. He was in the courtyard. I introduced myself, but he seemed to be expecting me, or someone. The conversation was interesting. I went to question him. Yet I felt like I was on trial. It was like wrestling oil. I flattered him at first, polite. Called him sir. I said that his miracles signalled that God was with him. I hadn't even asked a question, but he piles right in with some observation about how nobody can see God's kingdom unless they are first born from above. I suppose he'd clocked my strategy, was implying I couldn't say that. So I countered with, how can a grown man be born over again? Was it a pun? Did he mean from above? Or, again, that word has a double meaning. A knowing smile. Not unkind. His explanation, though, feels like an accusation. Don't be surprised, he says. Seeing God's kingdom, understanding what is or isn't God's doing, means being born from God's spirit as well as human flesh. Suddenly, here's on about the wind. Usual sort of illustration I've heard. Its unpredictable nature. Yes. It's unseen, beyond control or understanding. When I ask, but how so? He teases me. And you teach the faith? If I don't get earthly illustrations, apparently I have no prayer with heavenly ones. How could I believe? Believe what? He was on a roll. Evidence relies on first-hand experience. Fair enough. But only one person has witnessed heaven first-hand. Him? Recalling Moses setting up a snake on a pole in the wilderness, he then says that he, Son of Man, he calls himself, must also be raised up. Meaning? Then, the really unnerving bit. God loved the world so much that he sent his only Son. Him, those who believe in him will never die. He is a madman. He sent him not to condemn the world, but to save it. Hold on. The world? The nations? Not just Israel? Across the courtyard, suddenly came a strong gust of wind. If I'm honest, the rest of that discussion is a bit of a blur. I remember him saying how the light had come into the world. The irony wasn't lost on me as we sat there in those deep, disturbing shadows. I don't remember walking home. I didn't sleep. His comments about judging and condemning people were bang on target. He knew why I didn't approach him in daylight. I didn't want anyone to see. I was far too invested in the system, wedded to our traditions, to keep an open mind. I suppose, to a point, I lied to myself about why I went to see him. The last thing I wanted was change.